Pero bueno,
Aparte que no hay manera de...
making the the food system
Hello.
not to be. Okay. Talk you later.
Cool. ¿Dónde está la cámara? Ahí. ¿Ya? Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to this session. Welcome to this conference on investment horizons linked to the green energy agenda. If there is a subject that is interesting in the COP, is financing. And we heard yesterday that success on the climate agenda means get the proper finance. So we are in a journey to achieve net zero by 2050. And we need several things. One, we need investments. We need to invest in capital-intensive clean energy assets, and this is wind, solar, photovoltaic, electric vehicles, hydrogen electrolyzers, and we need to invest in assets that require high capital, although they have lower operating costs later on. We know also that we have a financial gap. From different sources, we know that the gap on financing is from 3 to 6 times what is needed. So we will have to discuss today how can we fill this financial gap. And we will also need to invest on capacity building. We know that the green transition will have a very positive effect on building jobs. The Energy Agency is reporting in the Net Zero 2050 report the creation of 14 million new jobs. But we also know that the transition, the energy transition, will require to shift 5 million workers from fossil fuels to renewable and upskilling an additional 16 million workers. So we need investment on assets and we need also investment on capacity building. I think we are in the right moment. COP28 has a very clear priority objectives. This is triple the renewable capacity, this is great, and double the energy efficiency by 2030. Those are clear objectives. Of course, this is not going to be easy in all the geographies. Maybe in European geographies, in developed geographies, this is easier, but it's especially challenging in low-income and middle-income countries. And we'll need to talk about what can we do also in those geographies. Maybe develop local institutions, create special conditions for international finance, or maybe work through the demand-side measures. Okay, this is the field to start the discussion. We have a distinguished panelist, expert panelist on this subject that I'm going to introduce. Let's start with Elizabeth Press is the Director of Planning and Program Support at IRENA. IRENA is the International Renewable Energy Agency. Elizabeth, welcome. Thank you. We have here José Luis Blasco, Global Sustainability Director of Acciona, and CEO also of Acciona Carbon Technologies. José Luis, welcome. Maya Ormazábal is the Global Director of Environment and Human Rights at Telefónica. Maya, welcome. And Gonzalo Muñoz is welcome. You was the UN high-level champion at COP25 in Madrid and Brazil, and is a board member, very interesting, of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero for the Latin America and the Caribbean. So you can bring the perspective from a very broad geography. We can also include the perspective for financing. And let me introduce myself. I'm Mariluz Castilla. I'm representing here the board of the Spanish Green Growth Group. This is a group of more than 50 companies. Some of them are represented here. That we are united by a common vision is that green growth is also economic growth for societies. So we champion the Greek economy as a driving force for economical development. So very glad to chair this panel. And let's start with the discussion because the people we have here have different perspectives, and I think financing is always a very interesting debate. Elizabeth, maybe we can start with you. Maybe from your experience in the International Renewable Energy Agency, you can share with us how do you see the key trends that shape global investment in the green transition, and how do you see we can fill this gap that we just mentioned for the renewable energy?
Thank you. And it's it's interesting that you're asking me also from personal experience because I have been with ARENA for 12 years, and for those of you who have been following the renewable energy, at 2011, it was more like a hobby. It wasn't really serious movement around renewables. And then with Paris Agreement and the change in 2015 in Sustainable Development Goal adoptions, it really has moved, and we see, the global pledge on tripling renewables is now being embedded in the political agenda. So it's really very moving from really nothing into a centerpiece. So I think that's absolutely amazing. And then with that comes the cost curve, and I think we all watch what's happening. We know how much the costs have decreased. So it's not really easy to describe the trends because you have to take into account both the price dropping and the increased investment. But let's just focus on 2022 because it does give a very, very interesting story. So there was about 1.3 trillion invested in energy transition. And so for ARENA, energy transition is really renewable sufficiency without grids, but just the technology, battery storage, electric mobility, and related. And so out of this 1.3 trillion, about 500 billion went to renewable energy. And in 2022, 83% of new capacity added to global grid was renewables. So it's really, you can see that its dominance is there, and we also see certain trends emerging. One, that the technologies in the renewable spectrum are actually reducing. It's really being focused around solar and wind, and the other forms of renewables, they're getting less and less investment. And I think this is something to think about because we will not be able to do what we need to do without considering everything that we have at our disposal. The second trend that we observe is the geographical concentration. And that is really problematic because just to give you one number, because when I saw it, I was like, I couldn't believe it. Out of this 3 trillion invested in renewables in 20 years, 60 billion went to Africa. 60 billion. That's nothing. And there's a continent that has such great needs and huge potentials, but there is nothing going there. And I think this is a topic of conversation for all of us because the world will not be able to decarbonize without Africa. And there has to be a deliberate effort to channel investments towards Africa. And the last thing I want to mention in this opening space is really how sectorally concentrated deployment of renewables is. It's really traditionally around power, it's around electricity, and we see it now with the electrification of mobility, it's excelling there. But really the direct use in other sectors, it's not there. And there's solutions that exist, so I think a lot more attention needs to be paid to other sectors other than electricity.
Interesting, and interesting the point you mentioned to Africa, the potential that it has, and the low resources it receives. Interesting. José Luis, Acciona Energy ranked world's greenest energy utility for 9 consecutive years. So that's great, and it's something that we have to speak louder. So you have a very good experience on investment in green energies. Maybe you can share with us which is the role private utilities can play for finance. Which is your experience in Acciona on addressing all the challenges you have around to build those investments?
A lot of questions on
okay,
one.
Start with the one you prefer.
No, thank you, Marilu. Thank you for inviting me. I think that, first of all, why we are 9 times the greenest utility in the world, this is no merit.
That's not merit.
No merit because we are pure green. We have no legacy. Another utilities has we burn green. We are now 13 gigawatts. This is the largest independent electricity generator in the world, green, fully green. I think that we have suffered three different eras or stages. First, as our colleague said, we were the alternative energy, alternative electricity. Not so, and these times are not so far away. Before probably 1915, but now we are seeing that the electricity, first of all, the renewable energy, as we call it, but it is not real. It's renewable electricity as a whole, more or less, has shown that we are more cheap, because it's more cheap than other fuels. It's more clean, of course, and give the people independence. That is very critical in terms of this now, nowadays. And it is not because the world become green or net zero. No, it's because it's a better solution. It's only better solution. If you have a look to what will happen in the decarbonization, only partially, the electricity sector has decarbonized. Let me know which other sectors has decarbonized and why. Because no cost to the final consumer. You check your iron, and the iron is the same with the different electricity, the different electrons. But if you want to change to hydrogen, you need to change other things. This is very important when we are talking about the second and the third stage that we are. Now, what happened? Because it's a better solution in the markets that we have a huge amount of investment on renewables. Because it's a better solution, the prices are falling down. And what happened with it is less attractive for investment. And we are in this new stage of investment that is not easy, that we need to decarbonize because the electrification, and we need to incentivize the demand. Okay, thank you. We need to electrify the demand, and at the same time, we have not the profitability that we had in the past. And this is a great dilemma, because we have no incentive for the demand. Where is the off-takers of hydrogen? Where is the off-takers of ammonia? And we need to think that there are only two solutions of that. We think about the cascades. If we are capable to transform the fertilizers as an industry, they spend around 34 million tons of ammonia every year, and with that we can introduce the Swanson or the Moore curve, and in the couple of years all the electrolyzers will cost half, and then we can decarbonize the maritime sector. Because if maritime sector can buy ammonia at the same price as the fuel, the business is there, and you don't need to have any commitment about that, because it's the solution. And we have these cascades in many places. We saw this with solar, we saw this with batteries, we are seeing also probably with hydrogen. And this is the situation. Money is moving in a risk profitability equation. We need to provide that the renewable solution is a better solution, with incentives, with the instrument that you consider.
Very interesting, your two waves. I mean, the ones that are cheaper, cleaner, and gives independence, that are already there, and they are, and the ones that we need to cascade, as you mentioned, to get this risk and profitability level that is good for investors. Okay, let's continue. Maya, from Telefónica, you have committed a reduction of 90% of your operational emissions by 2030, 50% reduction of the value chain, and you have a commitment to reach net zero emissions by 2040. All means investments. So my question would be, how do you align the investment strategy of Telefónica to integrate the green energy agenda and the green energy investments that you need? How do you do that in Telefónica? And which are the results you are achieving with those commitments?
Thank you, Marilu, for the question, and thank you for having us here. So, how we are going to achieve these net zero targets and how we are doing this from now. We have a climate action plan approved by the board, and this climate action plan is it's totally linked with our strategic plan. So we are investing in the most efficient networks. So telecom networks 5G is much more efficient, 90% much more efficient than 4G and previous mobile networks. And the same happens with optical fiber, and that is 80% much more efficient than copper. So we are really transforming the networks, considering its energy efficiency. So we have this climate action plan, really touches the whole company. It's a really transformation plan that goes from the operational model to the finance model, governance, and really touches it's a very transversal plan. And we are financing ourselves based in sustainable in ESG topics. So how we are doing this? We have been the first telco to issue a sustainable bond in 2019, and since then we have issued 7 billion of bonds, sustainable and green bonds, mainly green, and based in KPIs and really to transform these networks and all the operation that we have. 30% of our finance is based in sustainability, and we have the target to reach 40% in 2026. So I think that all the digital investment that we are doing, and that is critical to achieve the digital decade. So all the targets that we have as European Union and in all the different markets that we are based is critical also for the green agenda. So we are aligning both plans, the green and the digital one.
Thank you, Maya. I like to hear this complete transformation plan from a corporation. This means a lot of investment. It's great to hear 30% devoted to sustainability with a target to 40%. Okay, this is a way steps to go further. Let's see now from the vision from Gonzalo Muñoz. Gonzalo, you are a leading figure to fight against climate change. You have made a lot of efforts to engage different parties to the climate fight. So how do you see, which is your perspective of the role of the green investments to achieve global climate goals, and maybe your international perspective of how can you link different parties to move in the same direction towards the green agenda?
Well, thank you so much, Mariluz, and great to be here in this panel with all of you. First, I think that we have to recognize that in some aspects and in many ways, if we're here, it's because the investments has brought us here. And their incentives, right? I mean, it's not evil people deciding that they want to destroy the world, but somehow money has flowed in the direction where we are today with a lot of challenges that we need to solve. So it's not only about how do we bring more and better investment into the green economy, it's how do we also correct a lot of distortions that we already have in the market, in the financial market, where so far we haven't seen enough of recognition of how much the money is flowing, and even our money as contributors or our pensions are delivering the economy and the problems where we are now confronting. So in that sense, we have to first understand that it's the simplest way to recognize the problem is to follow the money, and we have to correct that direction and to identify that at this point, just like José Luis mentioned, this is a matter of risk. And we haven't seen enough of recognition from the financial market of the risk of not moving really fast enough. We still are operating in a perception that, I don't know, that we have enough time or that things are going to get corrected by themselves. And we know that it's not the case. And therefore, I do expect that if finance moves in the way that we're starting to realize it's possible, then everything else will move much rapidly. And when it when I talk about finance, I'm talking about also about all types of incentives. We've seen the effect of the Inflation Reduction Act in the US in terms of accelerating many things that we were waiting for a long time, and that example probably is one of the best examples of how much really finance can move things much faster even than expected. Of course, there remain an aspect of risk in relation to certain technologies or solutions or business cases that haven't scaled enough yet. So there's also an importance of bringing those actors in the financial market that will be capable or are capable to de-risk certain solutions. And that's something that we're seeing in many markets, and I can refer to Latin America, as you expect, where organizations like ECID or GIZ or multilateral banks have the potential of de-risking that first phase of proving that technologies can be deployed and then create the conditions for private money to just flow much more rapidly. So I think that it is a moment even to, as we have been discussing globally, to question the role of multilateral bank, to question the role of development bank, as they are still operating in the economy of the 90s, and we need them to really focus much rapidly into de-risking certain technologies in markets, as Elizabeth mentioned, that need this deployment much more rapidly, and many times we still don't have the conditions for just private money to flow because in many cases the risk is still too high. So I can see that it's not only as relevant as we understand, it's urgent that we allow the conditions for much more money to flow into all development markets and generate the conditions for de-risking and scale the technologies that will allow us to move towards the green economy that we require.
That's very interesting. If you want to add something, you can. I mean, this is a conversation among friends. But you mentioned very interesting things. I mean, apparently you agree with José Luis that this is a matter of risk, and investors pay a lot of attention of risk when they are investing. You mentioned also initiatives that you consider they are relevant, no? The RIA in the US to promote those type of investments or to raise those type of investments. And you also mentioned the role of the investment banks that maybe will have to change to help to create the conditions for investors. Okay, Elizabeth, maybe you want to add something because my question was, in your role at the International Renewable Energy Agency, which are the primary challenges that green energy projects are facing, and how are they being addressed globally? You mentioned Africa, Europe can be totally different. We mentioned also the case of the States. I mean, how do you see that, those primary challenges and the way to face them? Some of the challenges have already appeared in the conversation.
Yeah, and I really want to reflect on both what Gonzalo said and colleague from Acciona. I think one of the problems is that we're still dealing with this as if it's somehow a fuel replacement. And it's not a fuel replacement. We're developing a new system, so we have this kind of parallel situation because the business models that we're trying to force on renewables, hydrogen and others, they just don't work because it's not the same system. So I think there's a little bit of, not a little bit, quite a lot of that problem, because everything else is influenced by it. You know, the way the market is designed, the way the trade is flowing, everything is influenced by that thinking. As Gonzalo said, you know, we're stuck in the 20th century and trying to move with the 21st century energy system to underpin green economy. So I think that's really a huge problem, and because we're in a transition, you kind of have to run two parallel systems in a way to move from the old one and get to the new one. So I think that's really problematic. The second thing is that, you know, we talk a lot, but really when you look at numbers, you know, the money is still going massively into fossil fuels and at scale that is not comparable by any stretch of imagination. And so on average, it's like about 3 trillion a year goes to fossil fuel related investments. So, you know, we can say it's great to have 1.3 trillion, you know, going to energy transition, but still, you know, more than double goes to fossils. Fossil fuel subsidies. I mean, how long have we been talking about this? And still, and you know, when you scratch the surface and you see where it is, there's some really big surprises in which countries it is and where these subsidies exist. So I think there's some, you know, before we get sophisticated in what needs to be done, I think we need to look at some of these basics. So in our scenario, we basically say that, for the plan, for what countries have in plans, 1 trillion needs to be redirected from fossil fuels into energy transition. So that's like the first step, because we still see investments in the areas that really shouldn't be going to. And obviously we had a little bit of a glitch in the last few years, with different, compounding crisis and all of that, and we will see how this plays out in the end. But we also see a very much for the lack of a better word, a decarbonization divide. You see the global north and developed economies introducing protectionist measures, industrial policies, investing into domestic capabilities, and concentrating resources in their space. And I think it's very good that the large investments are going into green energy. But just to give you an example, when IRA was put in place in the US, massively companies from the global south went to Florida and other places when they can get a quick subsidized work. And why would they sit in Jordan or Morocco or somewhere else if they can actually go to the United States and get better money, quicker money, in those projects. So it's a very complicated situation. So I think we need to be very careful in how we, first of all, where the money is going, not to overstate the positive trend, because it's not that good. And honestly, I don't want to be giving quotes or numbers, but like every morning I read, there is this newsletter, it's called the World Oil. And I call it my exercise because my blood boils when I read it. So it's, when you see what's happening and how, it's flourishing. Every day there's new discoveries, new investments and whatever. So there needs to be an open conversation around that. And nobody's saying we can plug from one day to the next, move from one system to another. It's not possible. We all know that. But how we do it, and what are the, how the investments in fossil fuels are managed, and whether we are setting countries and people for longer-term risk exposure, as Gonzalo said. I think these are all very serious questions that we are not seriously discussing.
Interesting. You put the basics first. Let's say, let's put priorities and let's redirect investment from fossil fuels to renewables. Those are the basics. Then we will expand the world to the renewables. But and you also mentioned that do not overstate the good news, no? The positive news. I'm not sure if José Luis will agree with that, but probably you can share. You are a strong investor as Acciona on the energy and the renewable energy, and probably you have navigated through financial obstacles, market obstacles, many other obstacles. Maybe you could share. How do you navigate with that? How do you make projects successful? How do you de-risk those solutions to make them attractive to invest? And maybe you can also mention, to attract some of those investments in Europe, we have the taxonomy, we are trying to regulate. This is green, this is not green. Is that working? How do you see the role of these type of mechanisms to attract those investments? But tell us your experience on how do you navigate through that landscape?
Many questions, Mariluz. Okay, first of all, I think the first thing is that the elephant in the room, I think this COP is very focused on that, is the fossil fuel sector. Okay, you have a look to the primary energy that we are consuming is very, very consistent across the different years. We are around 80% of the primary energy is always, still now, a fossil fuel base. This is reality. No. The problem is to have a very easy solution. Phase out of fossil fuels. That's fine. That's we all know that this is not possible to agree that. Probably one day we will have possible our high-level champions can force the negotiation from that direction. But I think that according to your question, we decided don't wait for the regulation. We don't wait for the regulation for many years ago, because sometimes you are waiting for the regulation and you suffer two effects. The first effect is the paralysis, because you are waiting for the next regulation and everybody is waiting for the maritime agreement, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. And the second is because after the regulation, Spain is a very good example, we suffer 130 changes in the regulation during the last 2 years. Probably you have not, this is not the great place to invest. And this is the game that we are playing now. We are, okay, we are not waiting for the regulation. It makes sense in terms of business, that's all. But you're right. With the investment is a race, and we are investing in the US instead of Morocco because the government of the US has a very smart way in order to incentivize renewable development. Now, this is the great problem. I think Gonzalo has pointed out. Now, the 80% of the investment in renewable goes only to the 60% of the countries. How to change these flows, I think, is a real challenge. We are optimistic. We are not waiting for the regulation. We are not waiting for the agreement here in the COP. We are very confident, and the things that we are doing makes economic and sustainable sense. And I think that this is the way. According to the taxonomy, to be honest, as you know, I was part of the tech as a reporter. I am guilty of probably of the taxonomy in Europe, part of the people who was guilty. But I am frustrated because, to be honest, sustainable finance doesn't work. Doesn't work. We are labeling a vertical of activities. I say, if you are making these kind of things, you have the label of green. But if you have the other, you can have the label of telecom, or you have the label of blah, blah, blah. We are increasing the sustainable finance flows only because the renewable energy and all the green investment are more active in the market, but nothing happened. Why? Because we have not an incentive to provide a green supporting factor. The fossil fuel company has not done any penalty to introduce this systemic risk into the financial system. We have not any premium to have this only focus on green taxonomy. We need to connect the risk of climate with the financial system if we want to flow in the real terms with the equation risk and profitability in the right places. And this is the next step. The next step is to introduce all of these metrics into the accounting. Why these guys that are promised net zero has not impact in their accounting? Where are the impairments of the assets? I didn't see it. We were working on an accountancy firms, and we know perfectly that this has not happened. But in the way, which bank is introducing this into the equation of risk for the capital requirement if the regulator is not asking for? I think that this is a lot of work to do. We are in the starting, and I think that we are in the early stages, still in the early stages. It's still in the early stages, but exponential.
Very interesting. The call you made for the fossil fuels, I mean, it's not corporates, it's agreements who have to do something for that. And I also like the idea that you mentioned. We corporates are not waiting for regulation. We are moving without regulation. We cannot wait. I mean, we need a regulation, a stable regulation, because it's a stable scenario, but we are not waiting for that.
Yeah, but this is a question of competition, Mariluz. When you are starting, you are innovating, you are the first, but if they are paying for that, something disappears. Your competitive advantage disappears. We think in this direction. We need to move, early movers. We expect to have premium.
But that's interesting because you see something strategic and you don't wait to have a right scenario. You go first because this is a competitive advantage.
Yeah, but it makes business sense.
Makes business sense. And you also mentioned the taxonomy, and you introduced a a new concept, which is the climate risk, which is not really the taxonomy. The taxonomy is right; it's a vertical that is trying to regulate what is green and what is not green. But you mentioned the climate risk and climate risk associated with accountancy, because if there are risks, they are climate risks and they should be incorporated in the accountancy. And probably we are not yet there. It's coming. Let's see what Maya thinks about that. Maya, maybe two questions. One, which is the role you see from Telefónica to push for the energy transition? I mean, you are an enable for this type of thing. And also, how are you doing in that direction? And how are you taking advantage of all the coalitions you can build around that? And maybe you have also some comments on how the taxonomy or the corporate reporting directive could help in that direction. Is that helping to clarify? Is that helping on transparency? Is that helping just for corporations to know where they are? These two questions.
Two very different questions for me, I guess, as
but
well.
As José Luis raised that, maybe you can also give your opinion.
First, on what is our role in the energy value chain, no? So, because we have Acciona, no? And we are not a developer, but we are more on the demand side, no? We are really huge consumers. I mean, not just Telefónica, but the digital sector is one of the huge consumers of electricity. So, from a market point of view, so we want to move renewables faster. I think consumers have a great power in some markets more than in others. So I think what as an example, no, we have signed PPAs, no, with Acciona in Spain, and I mean 82% of the electricity that we consume in Telefónica worldwide comes from renewables, but it doesn't come all from PPAs and self-generation. Some of them come just from guarantees of origin, and I think from a sustainable point of view, it makes more sense to really from the demand side to increase the renewable matrix of every country where we are based, and that is not possible in every country, because in Latin America we know that markets are not as open as they are in Europe, or maybe even in Brazil, no? With Telefónica is increasing, and it's really impulsing distributed generation, renewable distributed generation in the whole in many of the regions of Brazil. So I think from a demand point of view, I think we as a sector and other huge consumers are critical to increase renewables in many countries if we are able to do so. So that's from one side. What can we do to increase renewable matrix? And on another point of view that we do is through our solutions. So alliances with our clients, energy clients, transport clients. So really to help the whole sector, the whole economy to decarbonize through the digital solutions. So connectivity, it says that between 15% up to 20%, it can be emissions can be reduced through digitalization, and we know that to have smart grids, to increase the renewables and introduce renewables in the matrix, we need the smart grids, and for that we need digitalization, and that is critical in every country. And we need to align better digital agenda with the green agenda in every country, because we need renewables and we need energy efficiency worldwide. And I think the digital sector has a lot to say in the green agenda. And I think in this scope we are going to see more on this conversation. But so far it was not very present in the green conversation. And talking about financing and taxonomy, and because we have been, and as I mentioned before, we have been ourselves financing using green bonds, sustainable bonds. I totally agree with José Luis. I think taxonomy is a great tool as an idea, but it's not helping a lot, because the alignment with taxonomy in terms of the economy is so little, so small, that it doesn't make it doesn't make the change. So if we want the capitals go through the green investment, we need to identify in the whole economy, not just in the utilities, not just in the energy sector, what is green and what is not. And we need to put more incentives and to make this profitable, and for that we need to improve the tool itself. So I think it's a great effort that we have been doing so far, but it has to go beyond some sectors. I think it has to go to go and to look to the whole agenda that we have.
Interesting, Maya, because you brought the idea of linking digital agenda and green agenda. That's very interesting. And the role you have using all the mechanisms, the financial mechanisms with PPAs, green bonds, to build renewables in your own energy matrix, and also to help clients to go in that direction. This is great. And okay, apparently taxonomy, it's interesting. It's really covering a lot of time. It's really using a lot of discussion so far. But you see, this is a small impact, and probably this will have to expand with time. Okay, I'm going to, if there is any question, I will open now if there is any question here. But Gonzalo, you have a special perspective being member of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. For the Latin American and the Caribbean. So how do you see the investors participating in that initiative in Latin America? Which are the obstacles you are finding? How do you discuss in the patronate that you are part? How do you discuss, how can you mobilize in that region those investments towards the green agenda and the renewables?
Well,
Give us your perspective.
When it comes to GFANZ Latin America, as a difference to other regions of the world, in this case, it's mostly about banks and commercial banks and their role. And that means, of course, decarbonizing a portfolio that is extremely diverse, that is very complex in terms of. It was a me?
No, I am guilty because I put my fingers here in this microphone. So
Don't worry. So it means changing the logic and the culture inside the bank and implementing very concrete measures into their portfolio and starting with their own analysts and employees is massive, right? So we're seeing that, where they have great cases like Bancolombia or Banorte or BCI or Itaú or Banco Estado from Chile. Like, there are some banks that are really honestly doing the job on not only decarbonizing their offices, that we know is nothing, is less than 4% of their emissions. It's all about where they put their money. And in that sense, I will very friendly think differently than Maya. I honestly think that the taxonomy is fundamental. It can be, of course, improved in all aspects, but those entities in Latin America, they're waiting for the taxonomy. They want to know much more, at least have a reference. Like, it's imperfect, we know that. And they're using the European taxonomy as an example. So they require a taxonomy that speaks about the language that they usually understand in their own national context, because that will help them a lot on infiltrate that logic into the analyst. Like, it's really hard to think about a 10,000 employee organization that need to analyze from mortgages to loans for consumption to investment in companies. It's really hard to change the minds of these people if they have a framework in order on how to manage that logic, not only when it comes to the most evident, to invest in renewable or to invest in electric vehicle fleet or potentially some forest or things that might be kind of simple, let's say, but when it comes to mortgages, like, that's a massive challenge for those people, and they require some unified mechanism that will allow them to understand what is acceptable from what potentially is not. And of course, they are also confronting the problem of divestment, right? They don't know what to do with the assets that they already have and how to move out from that in a way that will just not become stranded assets that someone else is going to run, but rather really moving away from that in a way that will close those emissions and not continue it. So the challenges are there, and it's on one aspect, of course, about regulation and taxonomy. On the other aspect is the culture of the bank. Another aspect is how much we can deploy in projects that are valid, not only for the taxonomy, let's say, but also for the NDCs of the country, for the expectations of the local economy. So really great examples that are already moving in our region. And as I said, like most of that is also trying to replicate good cases or cases that are already moving in Europe or in the United States.
Can I clarify one thing about the usability of the taxonomy? Taxonomy is a must. If you have not the how to qualify one investment as green, you have the risk of greenwashing, the continuous greenwashing. The taxonomy is an essential tool in order to focus in what is important. But itself is not the magic formula in order to flow the capital to there. And
At least for the moment, Gonzalo.
Yeah, but I think that I am fully agree with that. I think that Maya is also agree with that.
I am a total defendant of the taxonomy.
Yes, but this is a reporting exercise in order to build on that. Itself is a reporting exercise. Goodness.
Elizabeth, you may think if this can be also useful for Africa. You mentioned that Africa is still an uncovered area. Maybe that discussion can be interesting for you.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the taxonomy is what Africa needs right now.
Okay, you have mentioned a lot of ideas. You have discussed some of them, and probably you would agree. You can even agree later. Maybe you could, I should summarize, maybe you can do that, and is from what you heard, from what you have on mind, from your experience, which would be the 1, 2, 3, the ones you want, recommendations, top recommendations that you would put on the table to really push for further investments in the green agenda and specifically on the renewable agenda. You can start the one that you want to raise first, but put 2 or 3 ideas that you want to leave to the audience as a tool to build what can help further to build the investment agenda, the investment green agenda.
Maybe I can just start because I think it's a combination of kind of physical and political tools that you need. In our assessment, that there will be huge obstacles because of the lack of infrastructure to that we're going to really have to slow down. So we also need to rethink where the money is going in that context and you know how to expand and modernize what we have. And the second, it's actually related to what Gonzalo was talking about, the people in the bank not knowing where to go. The skill set. I think this is going to be also an obstacle in the coming years because we're seeing already a slowdown of activities. For one, the lack of capabilities we have. Like in Germany, you have to wait like 7-8 months to get somebody to install a heat pump. There's just not enough people. And so these are like a smaller, or for instance, for permitting, we expect people who were doing totally different job yesterday to start processing permitting on wind turbines. I mean, it's like there's just this human capability. We always talk about capacity building in developing countries, but I think they're required in developed countries as well. And these are the things that actually introduce new risks because we see reluctance in moving forward. So I think we need to be really systemic and structured. And again, to go back to the point that I made in the beginning, we're creating a new system, and that everything we have, the physical infrastructure, the educational infrastructure, the financial infrastructure, everything is shaped around fossil fuels because they permeate throughout the economy. This is how we evolved the last 200 years. And we need to look at all these levels because it's not, right now we're scratching the surface, but it needs to go deep and wide across the economy to understand what are the impacts, what are the spillovers, and because in the end it's going to be about whether people go along with this, and whether they're going to be supporting it, and whether the rest will move with it.
Interesting. José Luis? What would you add? What would you reinforce?
Yeah, I think that I'm the route Elizabeth points probably one by one. I think that the consistency is for us is very important. The consistency in the policies, and now we saw a little bit pushback during probably the last year in different jurisdictions, but I think that is a consequence of the Elizabeth effect, as I mentioned, that it's all designed for fossil fuels, and you are an exchange in the room that are uncomfortable. The second is about we need to invest more in infrastructure to abilitate or to enable the development of renewables. We need to triple the renewable capacity. We need to be conscious that we need to be more ambitious on grids. We need to be more ambitious in electrification of the roads. We need to be more ambitious on how to allow these permits in order to get the places in order to develop the renewables. But all these enablers are important. And the last one, and this is very important, is we are starting a new age. The age that we need to stimulate other sectors in order to have off-takers of the other vectors of energy like hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, and others that are the next generation to decarbonize really the heavy or the most difficult to abate sectors in the industry. That this is a question mark at this stage.
You open a new debate.
Yeah, no, we're at the COP.
Maya,
so from my side, just to add something now here, but I think we should help the demand to be a mover of the generation. So I think that's not happening in all the markets, and that is desirable because it will make a change in all the geographical distributions, for instance, of renewables. I think demand can help to move it. And also on the regulation, the taxonomy regulation, I think it's critical. It will help to give transparency and maybe to really move the wheel here. And but we need it to open to the real economy, to broader it to more parts of the economy. So to improve it.
Okay, Gonzalo.
Yeah, I would add to what has been said is to follow and support the work of SASB. So the real change will happen fast as we expect once we start measuring success, including the right type of metrics into our accounting system. And that change in SASB and then in IFRS is not only fundamental itself, so we should all be connected and helping and supporting, but also something that we can do by anticipating a little bit. So incorporating carbon metrics into your accounting system will allow you to understand whether you're accounting the right type of, you have a real or invalid balance sheet. And at the end, that will allow you to understand the real type of metrics when you are analyzing a project and whether we're thinking about false or correct type of profits. So I think that major change in terms of accounting system will allow to put together the finance metrics of success with the climate metrics of success, and I really expect that we will have the results of that work very soon being implemented in all major companies around the world, but also that we will be all offering possibilities of testing and providing metrics for that to come to life as strong as possible.
Great, a lot of ideas. I don't know if there is any question on the table. Okay, you provoke different ideas. We have a few minutes left. I will summarize what you say. I will jump a last question. If you want to say, we are at the beginning of the COP. So I don't know, you bring some ideas or which is the successful outcome of that COP. If you want to share something now that we are the first day. You mentioned already something talking about fossil fuels, but if you want to add any good wishes for this COP?
I think
What
that
would
this
you
turn
expect?
is for Gonzalo.
Gonzalo,
Gonzalo is
Well,
the
I
more
think that
knowledgeable.
we already had, I have to be honest, yesterday, very early in the morning, I was answering a journalist interview, and she was asking me about the possibility of reaching a good outcome in loss and damage, and I was telling her, no, I don't think so. And a few minutes later, that was achieved. So I think that already what we had yesterday is really great news. And that should give us some hope that maybe the energy in the room is changing in a way that will provide the conditions for accelerating certain changes. We all expect, of course, that being in this country, having the global stock day coming to hit us in our face, we will expect to see not only programs on tripling the renewable or doubling the energy efficiency, but also let's talk about phasing out fossil fuels quite drastically. And therefore, at the same time, let's see how many $1 trillion need to be deployed much more rapidly than what took us to deploy whatever $100 billion or whatever. On my agenda, we have just received very good news when it comes to the food strategy agenda. So we have 130 plus countries signing the Emirates Declaration on putting the food system transformation into the center of their strategy, and then a lot of non-state actors reacting with a call to action that will help hopefully navigate in the next 2 years to food systems being much more in the center of the agenda through decarbonizing of it, through stopping damaging nature, through delivering much more healthy, affordable foods for everyone in the world. So it's a very complex agenda that found for the first time in history in the climate COP the umbrella to cover it and to push for much further and stronger ambition. So just in that sense, I think that we are in a good track. And the other thing that I'm very hopeful of is that this is the first time that we have a COP with a health day. And that is extremely important because climate, of course, is affecting every single aspect of life in this planet, including the total loss of life, right? And that's what we're seeing nowadays. It's not a matter of, well, we're being more or less uncomfortable. We're seeing people dying and dying every single day. So bringing the concept of health and death into this agenda might help us to accelerate the agenda a lot more. And maybe we can even start using the real good examples of what happened during the COVID times.
Brilliant, Gonzalo. Thank you very much because your vision is very important here. Okay, we are closing. We are reaching the end. You mentioned a lot of things, but I collect two or three key ideas. We are building, we are based on a fossil fuel economy. We have to change, and therefore we have to change also all the investments towards a totally new economy. New age is coming, as José Luis was saying, with ammonia, hydrogen. This is a next generation. Consistency is going to be important, and transparency. You mentioned transparency. You discussed about transparency, but apparently transparency on risk, transparency on type of investment is going to help, and maybe the European case can be an example for others. Thank you very much for the panelists. It has been great to stay with you here. You brought a lot of interesting ideas, so thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.